South Africa's energy crisis looking set to become a political football ahead of the 2024 general elections, the governing ANC is under no illusions that the power problems could also stoke the fires of civil unrest as families and businesses struggle to make ends meet. But could load shedding truly be a distant memory from as early as the end of 2023, as suggested by a number of ANC figures now? Well, let's talk to the ANC's newly appointed spokesperson, Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri, who is in studio with me to talk us through some of the issues of national importance. Thank you very much for your time. And let's begin with what is causing frustration in the area of Soshanguve. It's not the only part of Gauteng, by the way, where residents are saying that the water cuts, they simply cannot cope with it now. Load shedding is being blamed for these water shortages. What's your message to frustrated residents?
I think our message, thank you, firstly, thank you, Xoli, for having us this morning. Our message, I think, as the ANC, is that we're coming out of a very rigorous process of discussing the most immediate actions that have got to be activated, accelerated as the cabinet sits this morning. They have a very clear directive from the ANC about the types of things we need to do to shorten load shedding.
Right.
And when I say shorten, a lot of work has got to happen in the back room to make sure that that happens. But there are specific interventions that both the energy dialogue that the ANC held just before the National Executive Committee took place, as well as just before the recent two-day Lekgotla took place. And the Lekgotla, as you would know, would have had a number of industry experts in the energy space talking about this. And I just want to walk you through the 4 or 5 interventions that the ANC has directed Cabinet to focus on, and then to come back to the ANC with a clear plan. So on the one hand, it's about the ANC making sure that there's accountability as a party by those that are serving in government, its deployees in government, and one of those immediate interventions on the broad front of declaring the state of disaster, which is what the ANC has suggested that needs to be implemented.
Right.
So the first one would be as part of a package of measures to address the energy crisis that we're facing, supporting the work, of course, of the NECC, the Energy Crisis Committee that has already been set up to prioritize maintenance, management and security of Eskom power plants, existing power plants, managing load shedding in such a way that it minimizes the impact on the economy and the provision of basic services. And I've just spoken to the Soshanguve unrest that we're experiencing this morning, which are likely to happen in other parts of the country in any case, if the situation is not arrested. And then, of course, mitigating the decision by NESA regarding the tariffs. And then the fourth one being implementing measures to manage electricity demand, including looking at alternative solutions such as solar and many others in the shortest period available. And this is now obviously undergirded by the need for a 15-month plan by the ANC to implement a number of measures to regain and reconnect with society around their pain points. And this is a key pain point.
It all sounds good on paper, Ms. Bhengu-Motsiri. Residents will say the ANC has been telling us about its plans for many years. What they are looking for right now are immediate solutions. So, again, I'm still stuck on this issue of Soshanguve. At least it is the one area of frustration that has now caused people to go onto the streets. Because, let's be clear, this is a service that they have already paid for. and now they are not getting the water that they've paid for, much like with electricity. It's a service that has been paid for by residents, but it's intermittent. What is it, or perhaps the question is, for how long should South Africans swallow this bitter pill?
I think it's a genuine question. We really are accelerating efforts at getting whatever public resources we can get to address the energy crisis in the country. And one of those things, Xoli, as I said, includes procuring emergency power. You know, it also includes relieving poor households through a variety of measures. So I would just say that when the Cabinet Lekgotla is concluded, we'd be happy to review what comes out of that and to see whether the sense of crisis has been sufficiently internalized, and then reflect on that and come back to you and have an interaction with you and be accountable on the basis of that conversation.
All right. At least then, let's continue on the back of the briefing that was held yesterday by the leadership, where you were formally introduced as well as the spokesperson of the ANC. In that briefing, part of what the Secretary General touched on was the messaging, particularly in times of crisis. He spoke about, yes, you're going to have multiple faces, but there has to be a singular messaging. And so the question I have for you is, with this load shedding crisis, what is the governing party's realistic timeline of when load shedding will come to an end? We've heard many ANC figures telling us about 6 to 12 months, 12 to 18 months, and as ambitious as the end of this year. Can we get one messaging around when it is that load shedding could potentially be ended?
If you followed what the Secretary General outlined yesterday, I would ask you what was your understanding of his message, because we have a singular message coming out of Lekgotla, and we've said that we've set ourselves a target of a year for load shedding to be ended.
That means the end of 2023?
That means, no, I mean 12 months, what is 12 months? We're sitting on the 1st of Feb. So I'm being very exact, and I want to be aligned to the message of the Secretary General. If there are any other alternative messages, stick with the message of the Secretary General, because
which
was in 12 months we are aiming for that. That's the target we're aiming for.
We may be talking semantics here. I thought I heard him say that it is the end of 2023. If you want to be as detailed, then you're going to say, seeing that we are on the 1st of February, it means that by the end of January 2024, that's when we should see the back of load shedding. Am I hearing you correctly?
I actually just think that the semantics are quite immaterial. I think the intent of the statement of the Secretary General and my statement is the same. So I want to say that what we want our public representatives and our deployees in government to understand is that that is what we're communicating to the people of South Africa. And therefore, it means the types of interventions that I've just outlined and the types of actions that I may not have outlined needs to be aligned to that particular message.
Okay. So now that we agree, we'll use your terms, 12 months. Based on what? Is this a problem, by the way, that has been with us for more than 15 years? You are saying, and you're making an emphatic statement, that load shedding will come to an end, hopefully by or in 12 months' time. On what are you basing this?
Well, this is based on a range of these. I mean, there's a package of measures that have been outlined at the Lekgotla, and of course, the back story of it is that there's a lot of work that is being done. And we want that work to be accelerated.
Yeah.
And we want that work, including those that are working against, for example, fixing the load shedding crisis that we're experiencing. So all of that combined, our perspective is that we must fix the problem. The people of South Africa are struggling. Businesses are struggling. Higher education institutions are struggling across the board. Healthcare is suffering as a result of the energy crisis across the board. So it's basically based on the fact that we believe that the state, when all its resources are aligned, has got the capacity to fix this. And of course, this also can't just be the business of government. It's also a business of social compacting with the private sector, with various players in the space, including social compacting with communities in terms of a number of energy-saving interventions that have got to be fast-tracked as well. So it's not just something that sits with this or that department in government.
Let me say why it is that I'm pressing you on this.
Yeah.
The question of timelines. South Africans have heard a number of promises, starting from as high up as the president, that load shedding would be ended in 18 months. I think that's when he first came into office in 2018. And we have had load shedding remain with us up until this point. The reason I'm using the word ambitious, the ambitious plan to end load shedding within 12 months, it's premised on this. Dr. Zwanani Mathe, he is the CEO of the South African National Energy Development Institute. This is a man who has made presentations to the Minister of Mineral Resources, or at least his officials in the office. This is what he had to say about the plant performance at Eskom. And he says, at face value, this seems to suggest that plant condition has deteriorated so badly that it will require a step change in planned maintenance for quite some time in order to catch up with all the maintenance that is required to restore the plant condition to a relatively good state. Of course, this will require painstaking attention to the quality and priorities of the maintenance. If an engineer, because that's what he is by trade, he's an engineer, he says the quality of maintenance, but the actual condition of the plants at Eskom are so bad that it's going to require some time to get them up to speed. So again, I'm pressing you on this question of what is it that you are basing this on, that load shedding could be ended within 12 months? Because it's important not to make false promises to a public that is already very frustrated.
Well, you would note that the issue of maintenance is uppermost in the package of measures that the ANC has directed our deployees in government. I will still press on that as well, Xoli, is uppermost. And of course, this is undergirded by a view from several industry experts, those that say it can be done in the shortest time, using available resources within Eskom as well as outside of Eskom, including bringing in, by the way, South African patriots with a world worth of experience in the space of maintenance within the Eskom environment. And so I think that's really the message for us. Maintenance is going to be the one thing that has got to be fast-tracked. We need to tap on the skills that are available in the country. We need to tap on the public fiscus. And on that basis, and this is really what we're basing it on, if I said anything other than this, I would just be clutching at straws.
All right. So how do you respond to those who say this is a political gimmick, the entire exercise about implementing a state of disaster, because in all likelihood, what it's going to achieve is that it is going to open the floodgates of corruption, much like we saw during the PPE procurement processes?
Well, I doubt that, because I think the COVID-19 experience, the declaration of the state of disaster in relation to COVID, apart from the corruption, which again, I think we're excited at the fact that there's been a lot of consequence management that is still underway in relation to that. I mean, people have been prosecuted and so on. Others have had to step aside and all of that. So I don't think that that will stick. I do think that there's a good story to tell about how we acted in a time of disaster as a country.
How will you prevent corruption in this instance of a national disaster being declared on energy?
Well, the thing is, right now, we have a strong lesson. We have a baseline based on the COVID-19 experience.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that with the declaration of a state of disaster in the context of the energy crisis, I'm certain that the government is wiser and law enforcement institutions are wiser. Those are responsible for supply chain management, where procurement processes are going to be unfolding, are much wiser. And I think the country is very alert to the need to root out corruption in any form. So I'm certainly not worried about that at this point in time. But we've got to be alert, we've got to be vigilant, not just as the ANC, but as citizens of this country, and to protect whistleblowers when those things do happen.
That's a very, very touchy subject that you are going on now when you talk about whistleblowers, because many of them are scattered around the world. Well, let me not exaggerate. Let me say at least one that we know of.
I was about to say that's a bit...
One that we know of has left South Africa because he says it's unsafe. Another that we know of is 6 feet underground. Terrible as it may sound, but that is what Babita Deokaran endured. So you've triggered something. Some of them were on the newspaper just this past weekend saying they are unprotected by this very government, which encouraged them through the message of Tumamina to say, let's put shoulder to the wheel and see the back of corruption. So what has the government of the day really done to protect them now that you've raised the issue of whistleblowers?
I didn't mean to trigger it, but it's an important subject because it is something of concern to the ANC and not just to any other individual in society. As a party that is in government, we genuinely are concerned, and this statement has been raised so many times in the past 5 days, starting with the induction of the newly elected executive committee, inducted by the elders of the ANC, Kgalema Motlanthe and Mek Maharaj. So what I'm putting out here is the fact that whistleblowers need to have a sense or understand that the ANC, I suppose I want to say, on the side of those who do whistleblowing. And when I say whistleblowing with evidence, and that they need to be protected. So that's the one thing. I do think that those institutions in government, in the state, that are responsible for making sure that there's a protection of whistleblowers should do the work that needs to be done. And if that doesn't kick in, the ANC should be concerned about lack of protection for those that blow the whistle in defense of public assets and public resources.
Well, I suppose we are going to all have to watch the space as to whether this government really does mean what it says, because so far the evidence suggests that they've not been taken care of as they should have. Let's perhaps wind down the interview and talk about another major talking point, or at least something that people are looking ahead to see just how serious this next administration is going to be. And that's the executive that the president is looking to assemble. What kind of executive or what kind of cabinet does President Cyril Ramaphosa want to have that will inspire confidence in South Africans that this time around he genuinely means business?
Well, I I am not in the mind of the president.
But surely this would have been presented at the Lekgotla, at the NEC?
No, it has not been presented. We have given the president a sense of the challenges ahead and the type of leadership that is not moribund, but the type of leadership that inspires hope to the people of South Africa. And the president himself has been very emphatic about the need for upscaling meritocracy, and that's the language the ANC has been using in the past 5 days and before that. So for us, those are the overriding principles in relation to how he looks at constituting his cabinet. Yeah. But I wouldn't know what the president is thinking about. It's not, I mean, that's really, quite, that we're going to be looking quite closely at those appointments. We do.
For purpose. Yeah. Let's conclude the conversation around your expectations of the 2024 election outcomes. I know we're speeding ahead of ourselves, but looking at the state of local government at the moment, I think it's a foregone conclusion that there's got to be legislation on how coalitions are governed.
Yes.
Is the ANC ready for a coalition government in 2024? Should indeed the predictions come to reality that it no longer has exclusive power of government?
Okay. The ANC is, we are gunning for retaining our majority. That's the first point. We're very resolute about that. We are putting out a 15-month plan of action that is three-phased, starting with the first 5 months and the next and the next. So that's our first starting point. The second matter related to your question, Xoli, yes, there is a discussion on coalitions because in any case, we are already involved in coalitions. And so we do need to have a very methodical strategy, a coherent strategy around management of coalitions where they exist. So that conversation, yes, did take place, and it is yet to be concluded just in terms of finalizing a coherent strategy around coalitions. But just to 2024, we are aiming to be that party of liberation that goes back and reconnects with our communities by selling and providing and addressing some of the most difficult issues related to the provision of basic services. And we've spoken about water, spoken about electricity. Yeah, the coalition conversation is ongoing, but we're aiming for a majority.
All right. Let's end the conversation there, hoping that you are going to come back to us as we look ahead to what the government Lekgotla that is currently ongoing, what that is going to tell us. And I suppose we can then look ahead to the State of the Nation address.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Xoli. It's my maiden interview as the new national spokesperson of the ANC. And I thank you very much for the robustness that you have, with which you have engaged me this morning. So it's a baptism, of fire this morning. I'm grateful for the comments because you are speaking to serious concerns by South Africans, and it's not, and it's taken in that spirit. And I hope to come back and hold us accountable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Mahlengi Bhengu-Motsiri. She is the newly appointed spokesperson of the African National Congress. That takes